We often talk about gaslighting as a function of abusive relationships between two people, maybe in a toxic family dynamic. Yet, why don't we talk about gaslighting on the macro scale and how forces bigger than us often infiltrate spaces trying to make important changes for those with less resources. It's been very clear to me, almost from the beginning of getting involved with Justice for Brittany, that there are nefarious interests in the movement. I know a lot more than I let on because I do not want to get my account taken down. Why do so many people have backup accounts? Really weird, right? Like people's accounts getting destroyed, them losing all of that. So I recommend, if you actually have interesting information on your Twitter or other websites, save it in the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine. It's pretty easy to kind of see how people have aligned with different interest groups within the case. It is interesting to me that basic knowledge about upstart groups in the US is never taught in school, so people, when they become advocates, are very naive and think that because their intention is good, that is equivocal to them doing good. Yet, we do not know who is on whose payroll. It's very interesting that certain narratives are pressed to the forefront, and look who's always collaborating with who, and who bumps and promotes who, and what will they allow to be within the broader narrative. Okay? So, when we think about opposition to the status quo, that gets replicated on the smaller scale, right? So we overturn Roe v. Wade, despite the majority of the US public supporting it, and within Free Britney, disability justice has always been, I am exhausted from all my Justice for Britney work. And it's because I took it all very personally, which is weird. I know that I can identify with her oppression, but people identify with her go-getter attitude in the fan base and say that she was empowering. Well, I didn't find her empowering. I felt like I was commiserating with her, okay? And no one with sub-threshold depression and anxiety can possibly know what it is like to be locked up against your will in horrible conditions, okay? So when I entered the movement, I could not believe the ableism and stigma. It never mattered what her mental health diagnosis is, what medication she's on. What mattered is her freedom to choose, and that mental health stigma was used to imprison her. It doesn't matter people's diagnosis. Don't get hung up on labels. I don't know why people can't understand that for disability as well. So wading into the fandom, I was appalled because it was very much, where's her money? She's not disabled. Why are you fetishizing her money? You can't buy freedom. You know? Like, it's weird. The reason I call out fetishizing her money is because that's exactly the narrative that was used to institute the conservatorship. It's in the New York Times. Fortunate risk. Okay? Maybe she didn't even want to make that much money. She could have just retired, done whatever the fuck she wants, be fine forever, dedicate her life to whatever her pursuits would be that Didn't need to be monetized at all. Gosh, I would love that freedom. And then in her testimony, right, she's like, I pay all these people and I'm the one oppressed, right? It's like the weirdest inverted pyramid scheme ever, right? So it's not about the money. I mean, it's about the crimes. It's about the crimes, okay? And so coming into the movement, it's very strange, the hyper focus on Lou Taylor. And you know what your enemies do? They accuse you of doing what they're doing. And I will tell you, living in DC was really bad. It was really terrible what big accounts did to the DC people. Living in DC, I was so excited that there was a huge rally organized at the Lincoln Memorial for, it was the day that Brittany ultimately was able to hire Matthew Rosengart. I was so nervous going. I didn't know anybody. I was so thankful they organized it. There was tons of press there. Well, it's interesting because they never bumped our protests again. And, you know, people make mistakes and people do better when they have better information. It's called call in culture, not call out culture, you know? And what we say in social justice spaces, which has been totally bastardized, like even the term, even people who think like they're opposed to like right-wing politics, it's like intent doesn't mean that things land the right way. But if you're saying you have a worldwide movement, and then on your website, you're only bumping protests in LA, New York, and London, how can you say it's worldwide if you're not even connected to other people? And my history as a 40-year-old person that's been involved in social justice movements since my late teens, because I was assigned community service for getting caught drinking underage. And I'm not showing off. I'm not. I'm just saying, like, my record is unimpeachable. I've been talking about this business for a long time. I've learned a lot from other people. I've made a lot of mistakes. So when you have accounts sicked on people, like a guard dog, like a police dog, like take them down, like online bullying, to the point of like, it's so disproportionate and irresponsible for people with big accounts to not be accountable to anyone, because fear has ruled this movement. And it's sort of ironic and terrifying, because when you have this court hearing this week, who did they reach out to? Right? For comment, for, you know, a status update from the movement. And it's the most vanilla, neutered thing I could ever even imagine, and showed no evolution from new knowledge in how to address disability. So, I guess what I'm saying is, like, I don't care if my account gets taken down. And I know, as in all artists and evolutionaries and revolutionaries, that everything I say will be more valuable when I disappear. And people will be like, oh, man, they were so great. They're gone now. And all I want to say is that they don't really care about us. And it's clear. And it's clear when, think about this. All the world is a stage. Shakespeare said it best. And people are getting so consumed in the Shakespearean drama. But what you have to understand is that her parents and family hurt her the most, because they sold her out and they didn't even make the most money. Because it's not about the money, it's about the betrayal. It is about the betrayal. And so, remember when like Miley Cyrus was like feuding with Nicki Minaj? They're both signed to Maverick. There's fake drama, there's real drama. It's hard to know what's what. And you can't do that if people don't have call and response and engage. If you think about autocratic communities and governments and cults and what happened to Britney and what happened within this movement, there's a lot of symmetry there. There's a lot of symmetry, and it's very punitive if anyone steps out of line. And it is very exclusive insofar as who's allowed to give input. I have seen receipts, and I am not going to reveal them unless I have people's permission. But I know who leaked that information about Stonebridge, who left the voicemail, who knows about all my Vegas research, but I declined to collaborate with them because I think they're abusive, even if they're a big account in the Free Britney movement. No, I said, you can take all my research. Just take it. Take it. But I'm not collaborating with abusers. And people would rather sit on excellent, groundbreaking research that I did. If I was a rapper, you wouldn't say, oh, she has a big ego. Well, I have a big ego, and my research is some of the best that's out there. You would rather sit on machinations of oppression because of your ego than share things that could advance justice. Britney likes math. Let's talk about a little math, okay? So there is the concept of social network analysis. So even if you have a few points, low battery, of course. Even if you have a few points, like say you have 10 numbers, but the possible combinations of those numbers gets really high. It's when you see like a number with an exclamation point, right? You can have 1 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 8, whatever, right? So things get really big really fast. And it's really interesting because I have engaged with people. And I know they know a lot of what I know, but they don't bump it. So if you've ever heard of Noam Chomsky, he'd say the capacity for regular people to understand complex phenomena is high. The thing is that they are resigned to a state of powerlessness in society because it feels insurmountable. But all you have to do is look at how people can do all these calculations for like sports if they're a fan, right? And so when you think about who are they catering to, are they catering to the lowest common denominator, or are they creating the floor? So there's this idea of the Operon window. So when you have an opportunity to advance justice because you have an in, you have the media's attention, you have people buzzing about a topic, you seize the day, right? And that has been completely abdicated within Justice for Britney, which I do, let's say Free Britney, because I differentiate Free Britney from Justice for Britney. How can people be MIA for like 6 months and then pop up all this week, right? Where you been? What you been doing? Why are you suddenly very active on Twitter? Fucking weird. Fucking weird. So if people are creating the floor, they're creating the ceiling. And so that narrows the scope. The Operon window goes both ways. And I don't think people know whose interests they are necessarily working for. I don't know. But I will say, anyone who previously aligned with Jason Alexander and was a lifelong stan of Britney and paid attention the whole time would have known never to invite him into the movement. Or Lynn, okay? It's fucking weird. I only started paying attention like a year and a half ago. Why am I going hard today? Because I don't give a fuck. I don't care anymore. And I have privilege that other people who I've seen repeatedly abused, it's amazing they've stuck it through because they have so much commitment to the broader goals of disability justice that they've been standing up the whole time in the face of extreme abuse by the Free Britney movement. I have white privilege. I have pretty privilege. Thank you very much. What? I'm tired. This is called a scorched earth policy. Have you ever, and this would, I would extend this to anybody. Have you ever really risked anything in your whole life to advance justice? Okay, arrested at a protest, fought the police, stood up for someone in a meaningful way without posting it on social media. And that's what I see, a lack of bravery, a self-satisfaction that you can only get through masturbation, okay? Because I live for the day Britney will drag some of these fans. But she can't, because then she'd seem ungrateful and people always discount what she says anyway. But some of y'all done her dirty. Dirty. Martin Luther King Jr. said the greatest threat to democracy is not like the Ku Klux Klan, it's dispassionate moderates who appeal to politeness and decorum as opposed to justice. Keep the peace. You cannot keep the peace if there never was peace, y'all. Okay? So, it is astounding. The self-righteous glee I see from self-proclaimed advocates who say, oh, this never would have happened to a man. It happens to men every goddamn day. Okay? Oppression is a matrix. It is not a spectrum. It is an unquantifiable phenomenon that the powers that be create so that people know their place in society and don't step out of line. Okay? It's a matrix. And so when we're engaging to the nth degree with BAnon, who are so clearly off base, and we're invited into the movement, Q became B, and, that's exactly how part of that happened. And it saturated the conversation in opposition to attacking power. I just want to clarify that I am day drinking, but these are like water, okay? So, it's the lack of urgency, right? When we think about, oh my gosh, we need reform. But people are being conserved every day. Everyone's been talking about mass incarceration forever, and the disproportionate sentences given to people who had crack versus cocaine and the racial bias that goes on there. We talk about these things all the time, every day. And what? Years go by. Nothing happens. You have to feel people and understand this is life or death. It's life or death for people. And it's the lack of urgency, but then also the need for some form of credibility so people will believe you and your arguments and da-da-da. That's why I've been nice. I've been pretty nice because no one's going to just listen to a raving lunatic who has zero faults. Okay? So just keep that in mind. People are dying every day in nursing homes. People are being sexually abused. People's children are being taken away. Child trafficking is the most trafficking in the U.S. The government just straight up steals children from families. Overwhelmingly, when children are removed from homes, they return to their family of origin. And they call it family policing, right? So it's so traumatic to get removed from your family. And a lot of times it's just because they lack resources. It's not purposeful neglect. And I don't know why there's this reticence to see Britney's children being weaponized against her under the frame of human trafficking as well. Like, her children were trafficked by the state as part of this huge plan to conserve her. That, whatever. Okay, the emails prove it happened. It was planned weeks in advance. It was much longer than that. Much longer than that. And I don't know why people don't want to, align with people calling for reform of the child welfare system. You see, like, this lack of intersection and how problematic it is. These systems of oppression that use coercive control to keep people in line, conservatorships, child welfare, police, it's all the same. One last story. I went to an anti-globalization rally in 2001 or so to protest, globalization, because basically what they've done, the U.S. companies, multinationals, is by taking all their business, manufacturing, etc., offshore, they can circumvent all labor laws. And so if you think of Britney's case in terms of billionaires being interested parties in narrowing the scope of how we think about her crime, this kind of human trafficking will continue. Why do we have higher levels of income inequality than we have almost ever had in the United States of America? Okay? It's all the same people. So, I don't know who's good or bad. I don't know who is naive or being co-opted or is trying to co-opt things. But what I do know is that if people don't stop thinking about this as some white trash hillbilly family, taking over their daughter's life, instead of thinking of it as billionaires using Britney to seed the rebirth of Las Vegas, this shit will never see justice. Ever, 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 ever.